Thanks for staying.
Evan will be your moderator.
Yeah. Yeah, normally I'm used to like showing up at film festivals and having like a moderator who's seen the film and asking pertinent questions. And I was like, oh God, what do I do? Just walking into a place. So Evan's a local journalist. He agreed to sort of help, ask some questions or at least help see if there's any people in the audience that want to ask anything. So by all means.
And you may also have seen me in the film as farmhand number 3.
Yeah. Yep.
I thought you were guilty.
Autographs later. Yeah.
I guess opening up, yeah, I mean, again, thanks for coming, and we're thrilled to have the movie play here, and thanks for coming out on a Thursday night, and any questions, comments, thoughts? Tomatoes?
Anybody? You, sir.
Yeah. Just wondered how you selected the music, and what was your sort of intended effect on the whole thing?
Well, it's funny, because when I wrote the movie, it was based on a very different musical sound. Like, it was actually really written after a very specific record. And when I started coming up with the idea for the movie, I liked the idea of basically moving around a specific album, because there would be a sense of like sort of like musical cohesion to it, that it was all sort of the same style. And I wrote it around a very specific record called Small Time Murder Scene by a band, friends of mine, called the Fedbots. And but then I'd written everything around it, and then by the time I got to editing it, I feel like the music had influenced like the cinematography, the style, the structure, that when we got to editing and put it against the picture, it, am I that boring?
No more talk for
Next
you.
there's going to be like a little hook that pulls me off stage. But I felt like it just didn't really contrast the material anymore, and Bruce Peninsula, who are the band who did most of the music in the film, I was introduced to them when I was still working on the movie, and I planned to be like, okay, well, the Fembots record is going to be the majority of the movie, and I'm going to start the movie and end the movie with Bruce Peninsula, because I just love the sort of like the sort of gospel choral voice of that band, and the more I really listened to them, and as I was trying to chart the lead character's sort of spiritual arc, it just really spoke to me, and eventually I made the hard choice where I was like, this is really even though this other album really influenced so much the film, it's like I feel like I painted the whole movie the same colors. Like, it's like if everything in the room is blue, nothing seems blue anymore. Whereas if you have like one blue wall against a wall of white, it really stands out. And for me, the style of that music really kind of like leaps off the screen as a very different palette to the rest of the movie. And so sometimes you just kind of have to like, make those hard decisions and do something different than what you... And the movie is very much influenced by this original record, Small Time Murder Scene, but the music no longer was really applicable to the movie I'd made. But they're all friends of mine, and I love them a lot. Any other questions?
Anybody? What made you want to shoot in Listowel?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's the question the first time around. It was just, we definitely wanted to, film somewhere where we were sort of like at least close to some like authentic Mennonite communities, and at the same time, it just honestly became a bit of a challenge of just what is not too far from Toronto, because a lot of our cast and crew are from there. I guess I'm entertaining again, and Google just sat down, and then just the logistics of finding out, is there hotels that can actually house everybody? Is the town council willing to have us shut down their main street so we can drive a house down it? Just all those logistical things just kind of played out, and as we started to narrow it down, we felt that we were welcome here, and it just provided us with a lot of the locations, and there was just we just kind of like dug the vibe and went with it.
All right.
I'd like to say, like, it was good that you came, though we didn't know what was going on in our farm at the time. We found out afterwards. Anyway. You're welcome back anytime you're free.
Thank you very much.
Screen at our place, really good.
Yeah.
Just another question. On the, like, say the police station, for example, was there a purpose for making it look a little more dowdy, I'll call it, than, like run down versus maybe an actual, I hope it's not really like that.
Well, it really depends where you go, because we went to a lot of places.
It just seemed like more run down and dowdy than a real
Well, maybe compared to Listowel PD, but I mean, obviously, I think the town that is in the movie is definitely a smaller town than Listowel. So we actually like filmed a lot of actually really like if you go to like the police station like in New Hamburg, for example, it's really tiny, and and so we were Listowel in many ways we were like as we were filming it's almost too big for what the spirit of the movie was. So we were trying to cheat it. It had. I mean, for example, the town that's in the movie, the fictional town, would never have like a hotel that could fit us, right? Like, because it was meant to be smaller, but at the same time, we're sort of trying to cheat some of those elements, and we tried to just play that main street section on the street where it really we've got like a lot of older, authentic buildings, and then it's mostly about then, it being like in those specific farms, etc. So I mean, to be honest, the place that we used was actually in Baden, which was like a town council office there. And it's funny, actually, there was a great, like, again, like, it's like it was in Listowel, we almost filmed in it. It was almost at Palmerston, like right around the end of Listowel, there was like a town council office. It was owned by it was like, it was an interesting space, but just a bunch for like lighting purposes, like too low ceilings, it became tricky to light. But it really looked very similar in style to that. And it's it's not really it's still a government kind of office, whether it's a municipal government office. So we were really actually kind of being authentic. It's just the Listowel police station, because it's Perth, it's bigger. But if you go smaller community, we really actually the thing is actually for us, we wanted to make the choice that it was the town it was based in didn't have OPP. It was that they actually still had like Waterloo has their own PD, and there's a few like Hanover has their own police department. We were trying to make it a fictional town that still. There was one town on the way to Hanover, and I'm trying to remember what it was, but I'm blanking off the top of my head. But they still had their own, they were very small, but still had their own police department. And when you start getting into those kind of communities, it really looks like that, because you don't have a big Ontario, government organization fully funding it, so it'll still have all the stuff that Toronto might, or etc., or London.
Like I haven't seen a computer monitor that small.
But I mean, honestly, there's some places if I showed you photos of it, you'd be like, "Yep, that's it." Yeah. So again, obviously we're adapting to the spaces that we have available to us, but we're also trying to be authentic and relative to the size of the town we're trying to portray. Granted, if it's Listowel, that would look pretty small, but that's because you've got like a larger Ontario OPP center that's substantial. But if you go smaller town, we were trying to plan it as like a town of like 1,000 more than several what's the population of 10,000? In that kind of, I can't remember.
5 or 6.
Yeah, but also because it sort of serves the surrounding areas. You've got like a bigger bit of a municipal hub. Probably the longest answer to a very simple question. But, trying to stretch the value of your $9 ticket price for a little longer because it's a short movie. Yes.
A couple of questions. One's just a minor one. The lake that you showed, is that one of the Marl Lakes near Hanover? Or?
That's actually Conestoga Lake.
Yeah.
Conestoga.
Mm-hmm.
Conestoga. Okay. The movie's fairly short. What was your thinking in making it as short as it is?
I have a short attention span.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought that'd be budget.
I just, it had nothing to do with that. Like, I mean, we shot like a longer movie in many ways. I just felt that, I just tried to tell the movie that told a story with, I didn't really, I tried to not be too conscious of runtime. I was like, I need to make like a 90-minute, 120-minute film. I was just like, this story just, I felt like it organically told itself in that much time, and if I made it longer, it would have just been to serve my own, I don't know, ego or something. So it was just sort of like, there's a certain business minimum that we have to hit. It has to be 75 minutes because of like TV sales and other business elements that, like part of the funding of the movie is based on a couple of television pre-sales, and they say like it has to be at least this long, because if they buy a feature-length film and I sell them a 10-minute film, they'll be pretty mad. But for me, it just, as I was cutting it, I try and be like a ruthless editor and just try and make the most sort of concise, tight film possible. And I think so many movies that come in at like 2 hours long, really, I'm like, my biggest criticism often when I see films like that could be like a half hour shorter, and I'd rather be only people wanting more than like, wishing people wishing it had been shorter. So.
What is the process of this whole thing? Like you go to the Toronto Film Festival, that it's bought or something?
Well, that'd be nice.
That's the process, or how?
Well, I mean, it just differs. I mean, like, you know, depending on the style of the film, etc. I mean, you can premiere. I mean, Toronto is like one of the major sales festivals of sort of the main 5 festivals in the world, and you know, sometimes the movie will get bought there and then screened elsewhere, or you know, for us, what's happening is, you know, that was a real, because it is a small movie, and you know, some of the small films that play in Toronto are still like $10-20 million films with huge movie stars. So you know, they're still not studio films that are like $100 million, but you know, I take great pride in the fact that we have sold Harry Potter tonight over 6-1. But there were no wizards in the making of my film, but we still did okay tonight. But you know, so for us, I mean, the standard process is like it'll play like you typically then release the movie in like Toronto and maybe Vancouver, play for a week and die and go to video, because it's so hard to be competitive in that market, and that's why, you know, for us, what we're trying is to actually release it in small communities before big communities, because to try and advertise in like a large city where there's like 5 million people or, you know, 3 million people, it's impossible, because literally the Harry Potters of the world, beyond just what they spend locally, the American advertisers are spending so much money that like even like internet American TV channels are just dominated by it. So for us, I'd rather, you know, we're trying a thing where we're just literally going to take it to small towns across the country, and you know, we're just booking literally, like, you know, because we filmed here, and you know, a year ago we really wanted to premiere in Listowel, and next week it starts in Palmerston, and it actually probably will play. You know, we've heard tonight, because there's good response tonight, it'll play I think in Listowel again next week. But then, you know, we've got dozens of other sort of, you know, towns across the country that are starting to book it, and we're going to do that for a few months before it actually has its theatrical release in cities, so that ideally, you know, because people talk and sort of trying to create like a bit more of a groundswell approach, and if nothing else, let people know about it where it wouldn't, you know, tonight, otherwise, you know, the only things playing would be Mastermind and Harry Potter, and a movie like this would never even, you know, penetrate. So even if people don't always see it in theaters, at least if they hear about it, then there's more interest for when it comes out on DVD, which will be coming out in May, and pay-per-view and TV, etc. So we don't entirely know what we're doing, because it's not a normal process, but we're just kind of following our gut and trying something a little bit different than just doing the typical business model of, oh, we'll just play it in the cities because that's where it's done and see what happens. Whereas, you know, I mean, there's more people in smaller towns than there are in cities, so in the country. So
have you done this before?
No, totally not. Like, I'm flying by the seat of my pants. I mean, I've made a movie before, but my movie. My first feature film was called This Beautiful City. That was sort of a very different movie, and sort of very like, you know, dirty, violent, sexual, like, or, you know, kind of art film, an entirely different style. And that one hit the festival circuit. You know, it released theatrically in Toronto, and you know, played for a couple of weeks, did well, but then really did nothing. I mean, it did pay-per-view and DVD, but there's a limited. You know, and granted, that was not as accessible, because it's the style of film, which I don't apologize for, but it's not as, you know, it limits its audience based on the content, and I just wanted to make that movie for, you know, I've got broad taste. Like, my next movie is a horror film, and then I'm going to do like a western. Like, I love a lot of different styles of film, and that particular movie was the one I just happened to be making at that time, and it was one we could make for very, very little money, and it was just a, you know, little personal project, but. You know, we just wanted to approach this differently, and especially because, frankly, when I was editing the movie, and I just screened it for a lot of my friends who were either men or from small towns, just they really responded to the movie. And you know, one thing that, I mean, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but they just sort of felt that there was like an honest portrayal of the community that is not as common to see, because either it's in discussions felt it was either like, you know, making fun of small towns, or it was like a Hollywood version, like a Dawson's Creek or something like that, which is not authentic. But you know, we just wanted to like film a community, and obviously there's a fictional element that's, it's not like Listowel's like a community per se, but it's like we just take the town and sort of invite a bunch of people from the town and bring in a bunch of, you know, people, you know, who were Mennonite from, actually they were all from Leamington, actually, just because that's where my friends are from, but it just, you know, we just, you know, that's the sort of smoke and mirrors, that's like, you know, theater, it's like there's illusion, you just sort of film a bunch of things that are authentic and mix them all together, and ideally you try and create something that feels real, even though if it's completely fake. You know, you'd be like, well, that, you know, you're driving along the street, well, that shouldn't be there because of this geography, etc. But you know, most people don't know where movies are filmed, so there's a license to sort of play around and create. But I hope that makes sense. Any other questions? Well, thank you guys so much for coming. And if the movie again will be coming out on DVD, and it'll be playing Palmerston next week, I think, Listowel. So if you enjoyed it, please tell your friends, and we'd love to. We're also booking into like smaller like church groups, etc. Are also booking the film. So if any of you guys have any interest, feel free to look us up and call us. We're very accessible. Thank you.